Hi guys, Asmo here. Early access for PoE 2 just started, and I've heard a lot of people say that they're struggling with leveling with the Mercenary, what skills to use, how to upgrade your gear, and so on. So I'm gonna give you a few tips because I'm in the early game still. I'm in Act 2, but it's going very, very well for me. Definitely not struggling, definitely not having any problems, taking down bosses first try. So I feel like I have a good setup here, so I'm gonna share it with you so that you know how to navigate the early game. So first, let's look at the skills, what skills you should be using. So early on, I highly recommend using explosive grenade and the combination of permafrost bolts and fragmentation rounds. So what you want to do is just drop explosive grenades as you're running where you think monsters will end up like in a couple seconds, so that they run through it and explode. This requires a little bit of a skill, but it's definitely worth using, and I would recommend linking it with scatter shot, which is the extra projectiles, as well as fire infusion, which is going to give you extra damage as fire damage. So that's the first skill that I recommend. This one is definitely really good for clearing, really good for single target, and as with every of these skills, you kind of want to learn how to use it and how to aim it, right? So with this one, you kind of want to predict where the monsters will end up as they're chasing you, and so that you can just keep using it while running. The next skill is the permafrost bolt. So I would recommend linking it with pierce and ice bite. Before you can link it with ice bite, you can link it with cold infusion for some extra cold damage, but the idea is we're freezing with permafrost bolts and just shooting the targets, and you also want to stand as close to the targets as you can. So ideally you're just standing right next to the pack and then you're shooting them, and then the pierce will allow you to freeze monsters like somewhere deeper in the pack. And then as you're shooting a few times, so let's say you shoot like 2 or 3 times with the permafrost bolts, and then one of the targets is frozen. As soon as something is frozen, you swap to fragmentation rounds and then you shoot it and it explodes. So that does huge amount of damage. It has nice AoE, it's a huge burst, it can take down like rare enemies and magic enemies very quickly. And this one you want to link with something like either lightning infusion, cold infusion, or something like double barrel as well, right? So double barrel, the skill that allows you to reload less, like reload slower, but have 2 bolts. That will allow you to just like couple times shoot very quickly with the fragmentation rounds, and then you swap back to permafrost bolts, right? So that's the main thing. On bosses as well, you drop your grenades early on, right? In the Act 1, you drop the 3 grenades because you have 3 charges, and then you just start stacking permafrost bolts. You freeze the boss, you shoot the fragmentation rounds, and then you drop the grenades again, and you keep freezing him again, right? So that's the rotation kind of, right? Those are the 3 skills that I would recommend using, right? And you can use also brutality with fragmentation rounds early on. That's something also you can use. You can use light infusion, brutality, but the thing is, if you have a weapon that has a lot of elemental damage, then you don't want to use brutality because you lose that elemental damage, right? So use brutality only if you have like pure fizz weapon. If you have a bunch of elemental damage, then do something like lightning infusion, which will allow you to get some extra lightning damage, which will give you shock as well. And that shock will multiply all of the damage that you're doing, right? And of course, the ice bite, the cool thing about ice bite is that the damage that you get added as cold doesn't only count for the permafrost bolts, it also adds cold damage to the fragmentation rounds and the grenades, right? So whatever you have hitting during this buff, which lasts 3 seconds, that's basically gonna buff all of your damage, right? So you just keep spamming this, throw grenades whenever you have the cooldown and whenever there are bigger packs, and then fragmentation rounds for something that is already frozen. And that carried me through Act 1 very easily. Then in Act 2, you're gonna have access to a lot of other skills, but what I would definitely recommend is adding gas grenades and linking them with something like corrosion, and then maybe inspiration as well for lower mana cost. Could also get like more AoE, and could also try to do, for example, fire infusion instead, sorry, not fire infusion, scatter shot in the gas grenade instead of the explosive grenade, right? And then inspiration in the explosive grenade, you could swap that around as well, and then also explosive shot to trigger that. So my basically playstyle right now is I just keep dropping grenades, right? So normally I just drop the explosive grenades and everything dies, and I just move through the packs and there's no problems. I don't need to use the fragmentation rounds and permafrost bolts anymore, pretty much. And so I'm basically spamming the explosive grenade, and then when there's more monsters, sometimes I can alternate gas grenade and then explosive grenade, because the gas grenade will also reduce the armor, and the explosive grenade can actually explode the gas grenade as well, right? Because it's gonna ignite stuff, and it's gonna also basically explode the cloud that the gas grenade generates. So you get multiple explosions, and it acts as just like another grenade that you can throw. So I'm basically throwing gas grenade and then explosive grenade, and then I throw explosive shot once I'm out of grenades as like a supplementary damage, which also explodes all of the other grenades. The explosive shot is linked with Innervate. That's because I can get extra lightning damage for all my skills, right? So this is attacks gain 25% damage of attacks gain 35% of damage as lightning damage for 3 seconds on killing a shocked enemy with supported skills. So this is something that you often use when you're like finishing things off, right? So when you're finishing things off and you kill with this, with the explosion from it, then you're gonna get the extra lightning damage for everything else, right? Because there's just simply like not enough support gems yet that I can use with this. And double barrel just to shoot a couple times. For example, if you have grenades in multiple different places, you can just shoot a couple times and then back to the grenades because the cooldown is pretty quick. And then of course we're using Herald of Ash, and Herald of Ash gives me some extra clear. The overkill damage ignites, detonates the clouds, and it's a very, very nice playstyle. So you're gonna see in the background some footage from the bosses. It's very, very fun. The character feels very good, very strong compared to like some of the footage I've seen. I've seen some people try to like use the basic attacks, right? The crossbow shot and link it with like multiple projectile stuff. I've seen people try to do like rapid fire with the grenades. I've seen people try to do a bunch of different stuff, but nothing really looked as good and as clean as these two setups, right? So like explosive grenade as a base, and then permafrost and fragmentation in the early game, and then later in Act 2, whenever you can, you swap that to gas grenade and explosive shot, or again, like around the explosive grenade, right? So you always kind of play around the explosive grenade. It's simply like the strongest skill. So what are the passives? Passives that I would recommend is to simply pathing through here. I don't really think attack speed is that good early on. Once you get a bunch of cooldown reduction, like this cooldown reduction here, for example, and more charges for the grenades, then attack speed becomes good. So then maybe I will respec for that. But early on grenades, attack speed is not good. But what is good is basically just the projectile damage. You can also path through here for the two-handed weapons, but I find that it's better to rush straight to here for the movement speed, as well as the reduced fuse duration or increased crossbow reload speed. So this is something that I would definitely rush to this area first off, and then we go for the more grenade stuff, and then there's lots of different options, right? You could go for the flask nodes, arcane alchemy, and then movement speed. You could also path down. You can get the cooldown reduction here. You can get the crossbow nodes here. You can get projectile nodes here as well. You can get fire nodes here. You can get armor and evasion. You can get AoE here. And then later, the right side, we're going to be pathing toward crit and stuff like that. So that will be the setup. Also, one clarification, because I thought actually my weapon skill points are bricked, and I'm sure all of you are not fully like understanding like how do they work. Basically, you need skill points available to use the weapon set skill points. If you use skill points, for example, let's say you have, let's say you have 4 skill points in general, right? And you have 2 of each weapon set skill points. If you spend these 4 skill points as generic skill points, you can no longer spend them as weapon set skill points. You can only spend weapon set skill points if you have available skill points, right? So if I have 4 available skill points, and I have 4 of each of the weapon set, then I can spend 4 here and 4 here, right? And then I can swap between it. That would probably require using the weapon swap speed nodes, but the reason why I wouldn't really worry about this early on is because you are very unlikely to have 2 good crossbows, and this brings me to one of the most important things early on. Craft the crossbow. Spend all the currency you can to craft the crossbow. You can see this crossbow is kind of insane. And I'm only, level 24, this is like Act 2, and this is the crossbow I have, right? So you can use the bench to salvage items with quality, like weapons with quality, to get blacksmith whetstones. That's going to give you the extra physical damage. You can use artificer's orbs, so you salvage items with sockets as well. It doesn't cost you anything, so just salvage all the items with sockets to get artificer's orbs, because these are going to allow you to get the runes into your weapons. This is the first and most important thing. It's a huge amount of flat damage. And then you, of course, want to make sure that you're disenchanting all of the rare items that you find that you're not using, because regals are super powerful. You just spam the transmutations and augmentations on a good crossbow basis until you get something decent, and then you regal and spam all of the exalts that you got on it, right? And that's how you get the crossbow. So you make sure that you get the sockets, you make sure that you spend all of the exalts and regals on that, on a good base, that you happen to hit something good in the first stages of crafting, which is transmutation, augmentation, and just craft the crossbow as good as you can. That's the first and most important thing. If you have 2 great crossbows, then you can start doing weapon swap thing, right? But without 2 good crossbows, this is not really that much worth. The other thing that I would definitely prioritize is, of course, boots with movement speed. So always look at boots. Always craft boots if you don't have good movement speed. And then, of course, gloves. Gloves are huge. They can give you leech, so you can see here I have physical attack damage, leech of mana. It's insane. Of course, I have flat damage on it as well, right? That's another very important thing. And then, life and resistances you can get on everything, but this is the important part. Also, rings, super important. If you can get iron rings or resistance rings with like damage to attacks, that's also very, very important. That's going to give you tons of damage, right? So that's basically how I set up my character early on. I think this is a very, very nice setup early on. I would definitely recommend it because I really haven't seen anybody else doing that well in terms of like their different skills that they've been trying. A lot of people have been trying like very, very clunky combinations, but I think this is the thing early on that you want to use. You don't really want to use like 7 different skills and crazy stuff. You just want to simplify it, use like one main skill and then a couple of other skills that are gonna help it stronger or whenever you're waiting for the cooldown of it, right? And that's basically it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your leveling and see you next time. Bye bye.